This is Brad Montgomery. Welcome to the Successful, Interesting, and Awesome podcast, where I interview people who are, wait for it, successful, interesting, and awesome. Or at least one of those three. What? It's time. Hi, everybody. My name is Brad Montgomery. I love this podcast thing, but sometimes podcasts are better than other podcasts, and that means I must have a super cool guest on. Yeah, and here's the background on that. I've been kind of going through people in my life that have inspired me and encouraged me, people that have let me know that maybe I could do this, people that picked me up when I was feeling down or whatever. Just tons of people in all of our lives that influence us in a positive way. So, for example, I was talking to my favorite drum teacher ever this past week, and I'm going to get him on because he was more than a drum teacher than me. He was an encourager. So who is this wonderful person, you ask? Who is the person that encouraged me more than anybody else I'm ever going to get on this show, because he is number one? Say hi to my dad. This is Robert Montgomery. Dad!
Hello.
Well, how fun is this? All right, so here's the fun thing for me. Among other things, I'm pretty sure you have no idea what we're doing now. Is that right?
That's right.
All right, well, so do you know what podcasts are?
No.
All right, well, it's not a test. What this is we're going to just record this conversation between you and I. And then anybody who's interested in you or me, or hopefully the both of us, will be able to look this up and listen to the audio, or they'll be able to look at the video. And they'll get to hear me pepper you with questions. So let's talk about you as a kid, Dad.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah, so here's what I'm curious about. I'm curious about your relationship with your parents. What were they like as little kids? Because I suspect they were not super warm and fuzzy adults, but I don't know that. Were they big huggers? Were they constantly saying, "Oh, Robert, you're amazing"? Or were they more of a get out there and do your work kind of parent?
Well, I don't know that they were warm and fuzzy, but my mom was really a kind person and nurturing, always helping you out. My dad was a little less so, but I think that's generational. But we liked each other. He liked me, and felt good. It's a good family.
How do you know your dad liked you? Like, how did he demonstrate that?
Well, I'd be in the living room playing my trombone with Mom on the piano, and he'd be sound asleep after drinking a Manhattan on an easy chair.
Well, I'm just trying to picture him following his sleep with a piano and a trombone right next to him. But so what about that made you think, when you said, the question was, how did he demonstrate that he cares about you? And the answer was, he falls asleep when I play trombone. Tell me more.
I think I shouldn't have talked about going to sleep with the trombone. Yeah. Well, he was very encouraging. He helped me do all kinds of things, like learning how to invest my money. I was a paper boy for 4 years, and he took me down to a brokerage house one time and said, "You're going to buy 4 shares of IBM with all our money." I said, "What?" That was nice, though. Got me going.
Dad, you're getting some comments. Here's a guy in Mexico says, "Hermano." And here's somebody you know. Hi, Bob, from Kim Oldridge.
Hi, Kim.
You have an audience. All right. How old were you, though, with the paper route? 10? 12?
I don't know, maybe a little older. It was teenage, 13, 14, maybe 15, 16. I was 4 years. So what's that make me? 13, maybe?
Yeah, something like that. And so, do you remember the details of him taking you down to invest that money?
Details of what?
That whole story, like, is that just something that you vaguely remember, or do you remember him walking you in the door and introducing you to a
Oh
broker? And
no, oh no, we went down to Betcher and Company, and he said, "You got your money with you?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And we went up to a window, and I said, well, "What am I buying?" And he said, "IBM." And it took all my money. I don't know, it was $400 or $500 or something. Oh my God.
and were you're giving out dollars that you earned as a paperboy, like cash money?
No, I must have had a bank account. I don't know for sure, but I wasn't cash. I'm not going to do that.
But so even though you were saying, "Come on, now I'm poor," because you felt rich, then your dad says, "I love you, Robert. We're going to invest your money." Then you felt poor, but some part of you knew that this was an expression of your dad loving you.
Oh,
Tell me
I
about that.
didn't feel poor. I didn't feel poor. That's your interpretation.
Oh, well, how did you feel?
I felt fine. I figured that he knew what he was doing, and I was going to get filthy rich.
All right, nice. Well, you know this, Dad. The cool parallel to that story is he did the same thing to me. It wasn't Betcher and Company, but he put me in his car. He drove me downtown Denver. We walked into the Schwab office, and he told me what to sign, and suddenly I was a stock owner because of your dad.
Hmm.
Well, I'm still trying to get to the question. Really is like, your dad loved you, and I know he cared about you. I'm just curious how he expressed that when you were a kid. He wasn't a musician. How did he receive your music? You were into it, but he wasn't one. How did that go?
Well, he didn't. He didn't object. He didn't object, and I think he thought it was okay. I remember um, one time thinking about going to music school, and he said, "Well, who's going to pay for that?" That's a that kind of a stopped me.
Yeah, that would do it. Well, what about your mom? Was she more of a hugger than your dad?
No, I don't. Well, we weren't a hugger family. I shook hands with my dad. That's the way that worked, and I liked that. That was very comfortable. That was a sign of affection.
Right. How did your mom show you that she loved you?
Oh, Gad, she's always there. You know, I had questions as you grow up. She was there with ready answers and was understanding and supportive. Um, she's a nice gal.
What was their? What do you remember about their marriage? Your parents' marriage?
Well, it was solid. That's all I can tell you. Uh, they didn't go around hugging each other, but I remember they stood next to each other at the kitchen sink and washed dishes.
Ah,
I thought that was I thought that was pretty good. And Alan and I would be in the dining room, which was just a few feet away in our very small house, and we'd be talking, we'd be doing homework, and I remember that. So,
hmm. But you don't remember them like hugging and kissing or any affection between them that you noticed?
well, mutual respect, but no hugging.
They weren't making out during Gunsmoke.
No, no.
Kim wants to know, well, how come, based on your answers, all of your kids are super huggers?
I don't know how that happened. Uh, it was against my better judgment, but I wanted to shake hands the way I grew up, but you guys, you kids wouldn't allow that. So I was turned into a hugger uh, against my wishes. It's turned out all right. I like it now.
Oh yeah, okay. I was gonna ask. I don't know why, Dad. That just cracks me up. All right, well, because my memories of your parents, Dad, were that they were always kind to me, and especially your mom was very. I mean, I'm talking as a little boy. I remember her. I think you and Mom would drop me off there, maybe, or so Mom could go do an errand, or who knows what. So your mom would take care of me, and she'd make chipped beef on toast, creamed chipped beef on toast.
Mhm.
I remember taking care of me, but I don't remember her being warm at all. Like I was comfortable, but she was never, "Oh, Brad, come in here. Just you're doing so great." She never did that.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I don't think you're scarred up too much because of that.
No, no, no. She was a good grandma. All right, let's talk about your relationship with your brother. So you're 4 years older than Alan, right?
Yes.
Did you guys play together as kids, or were you old enough that that just wasn't attractive?
Oh, I'm sure we played together. But when I was in fourth grade, I guess would it be? He was
Hmm.
just starting kindergarten, and once I got out of elementary school and went to junior high, we were never in the same school again. As junior high was 3 years, senior high was 3 years. So there was a time there that we really weren't together much. We did go on family vacations in the summertime.
So what's that like? Because my big brother, Mark, is 4 years older than me. So I know the younger version of that, which is, oh, I'm excited about high school. And he went off to college. So he was, it was just really difficult to connect. So do you kind of feel like you didn't know each other that well, or?
Yeah, there were years that I went to a different college than he did. He went into the service after well, I don't know, a year or two at CU. Um, so there were years that we really weren't together, and we had to get reattached later.
Yeah, so I'm really curious about that. How did that happen? Was that you? Was that him? Did it just happen by accident? And where were you in your life that you guys started saying, "Hey, we're brothers. We should hang out"?
We never really hung out. He lived in Boulder with his wife, and I was in Denver. He had two nice kids,
Hmm.
and uh, every once in a while we'd get together, but it was not often, not often. I don't know whether it was the distance or what, but um, like it.
It seems kind of normal, but I wonder if you have any regrets. Like, I don't know how you could have done it differently, but what do you think?
No, I don't have any regrets about that. Um, he's now moved to Pennsylvania, and we talk once or twice a week. Uh, he sends me books and articles that he thinks I'd be interested in, and I do the same to him. We're both bird watchers, and we compare notes on that. So it's okay. We're apart. And when he was in Boulder, we would meet for lunch every month. I don't mean lunch, breakfast,
Hmm.
um, and that was fun. I kind of missed that.
I'm going to put up a picture here, Dad. This is a picture. Let me make it bigger. This is a picture of you and your brother and your families. So I look to be maybe first grade there, and I'm going to guess you're 45.
Well, how old? Let's see. How old is Mark?
Yeah, so
Huh?
Mark's maybe fifth grade there, fourth grade.
That makes him what? 10?
9, yeah,
Yeah, no, I'd be about 35.
30. You look like such a stud, Dad.
Yeah, I was. I had hair back. That was
Yeah,
nice.
I know all
I
about that hair thing.
high forehead, but it got
All
higher.
right, well, all right, so we've gone through your parents. We talked a little bit about my uncle Alan, your brother. Let's go to young Marty Montgomery. So, I mean, I found a picture, Dad. Let me see if I can put it up. Here it is. Here's a picture of you. It's a wedding picture. You look like you're 12, Dad. This to me is
Mhm.
just such a powerful photo. You are such a young man. How old were you when you were married?
25.
25. And you
Mm,
married my mom, and that, from what I can tell, Dad, that marriage worked.
I didn't hear you.
That marriage worked. You for
Oh,
for whatever
sure. You
reason,
bet.
that thing happened. But
Oh,
how in the world do you do that when you're 25? You marry somebody you barely know. You're engaged for such a short amount of time, and it worked. I'm really curious about this marriage. Did you just get lucky, Dad, or was there? What was the secret to your marriage?
what's the secret of yours? I, I can't
Well,
think of just one thing. I mean, we worked at it. Um, it's not automatic.
the reason I ask is I married Kim when I was older, and I dated her a much longer time than you dated Mom. So by the time I married Kim, I knew a lot about her, and I knew how we were going to go. At least, we hope. But you, how long were you engaged?
We The first date was on July 9th, 1959, and we were married on December 28th the same year. So that it was fast, but I think we were both ready. I was through law school. She'd been teaching 2 or 3 years, um, and then the chemistry was great, and we just decided to give it a go.
Right. Well, yeah, I'm just so struck with that because my guess, Dad, is if I would have said to you when I was 25, I met a woman and I'm going to marry her in 6 months and have kids, you would say, "Ho, slow down, honey bunch."
Mhm.
But yet that worked really well for you. So I'm just really struck with what's the deal with that?
Well, I think sometimes you just know, um, and we did. So
Yeah, clearly.
yeah,
All right.
and we had three nice kids thereafter. And you're one of them.
I would like to point out that I am the best of your 3 children. So, all right, yeah, let's talk about kids. You guys had kids fairly early, and I'm curious about this, Dad. Did you decide to have kids? Like, did you have this burning desire, I want kids? Or was it more of a, oh, this is what people in our world, in our neighborhood, in our community do about this age? Like, it was more of a default thing as opposed to a choice.
No, it was a choice. No, we decided that we wanted to have 3 kids, and we didn't know what having 3 kids meant. Turned out to be quite a challenge when you were young, because we had there they are, 3 kids. They're 2 years apart, and roughly 2 years. So
Did you
it
have
was
those conversations before you're married?
pretty, no. Well, we did talk about children, whether we wanted children, and the answer to that was easy. I said sure,
Right.
but we didn't settle on the number. That was later.
When I was having my kids, I can't tell you how many people said, "Oh, it's this that birth will be life changing. It will be magical. You'll never feel love like you'll feel that instant the kid pops out of your wife." Was that true for you?
I don't think so. It certainly changed my life. It changed Marty's life. Boy, all of a sudden you've got a baby there, and what do you do with it? We didn't know. We had a book that was written by Dr. Spock, and when you did something as a baby, we'd look it up in Dr. Spock, and it was never there. You were always doing something that he hadn't covered in the book. You, you've had children of your own, and you figure it out as you go along. It's it's life changing. You're not kidding. In a
Well,
good way. In a good way.
for me, when my first was born, Claire, I did, it was just weird. Here's this human, and there wasn't
Yeah.
this profound thing that everyone said. You grow into that, but at first it's like, oh, ick, it's all covered with blood. There was no.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, tell me a little bit about feeding. So by then you're running your law, you're a lawyer. Your young wife has little babies. How did that work? Like, I pretty much got out of feeding my kids because Kim was breastfeeding. Do you remember waking up in the middle of the night to do bottles, or how did that go when the kids were tiny?
Uh, she got up and fed you. I don't think I was much help in that department. I I can imagine myself not hearing you. she,
Why was that? Was that just expected? Like, because here's what a man does. A man goes to work and earns money, and the woman's going to handle the three kids. Or was it
yeah.
a conversation you had?
No, I think that was just what was expected. I don't know. We never really talked about it. Oh, there I am.
I'm just. It's so fun to see pictures of a young version of you. You look kind of serious there.
I don't remember that photograph.
Let's talk about your legal career. Before you were able to be a lawyer, you had to go to college. And I am amazed about so many parts of your life, but one of them is that you went so far away to college when that could not have been common at all. Now it's not a big deal to send your kid across the country, but for you, how in the world did that come up? That you would go that far away?
There's an auditorium here in Colorado, or at least there in Denver, there was, called Phipps Auditorium in City Park. And on Saturday mornings, they had movies for kids. And one Saturday morning, I rode my bike down there, and I saw two short subjects that were presented in black and white movies. One was Dartmouth College, and one of them was Middlebury College. And in both cases, showed kids skiing on the campus. And I thought, that's for me. And I thought 2,000 miles away from home was about right. When you're 17 or 18, kind of like to get away from the house and do some going up elsewhere, which was really great. I like that.
How young were you when you saw those shorts?
Oh, I suppose 16, maybe.
All right.
16. And
And
then
these were
I don't know.
were they kind of commercials?
No, they were what they called short subjects, maybe 10 minutes apiece or 15 minutes apiece.
Do you remember why you thought Dartmouth might be the one and not Middlebury?
No, I really don't. I didn't apply to Middlebury. Applied to Dartmouth, and that's all I applied to. Applied to Dartmouth and figured if I didn't get that, I'd go to someplace local.
And what did your folks say? They said, "Oh, you want to go to school across the country." Were
Well,
they excited or
well, supportive. They said, okay, fine. That's yeah, no objections.
right?
That's yeah.
Well, I'm just trying to picture it because now, if your kid goes across the country, you can text them instantaneously and you can visit them quite easily. And a phone call does not have a premium surcharge. But that was not the case with you and your mom and dad. And I'm thinking must have been hard on them to put their little boy on a train and know they weren't going to chat with you much.
Yeah, I remember my dormitory my freshman year had one phone in the entire dormitory, which held a couple of hundred kids, and it was a pay phone. Put the quarters in, and talking by telephone long distance was expensive. I think it was maybe $3 or $3.50 or something back then. I don't know what that would be in today's dollars, but it was expensive. So we didn't talk much. And my mom was after me to write letters, which I really was pretty bad at. And I remember one time she sent me a return postcard, hadn't been canceled yet. And she wrote on it, she said, are the trees pretty? Question mark. Because they changed these beautiful colors in New England. And the next one was, do you like your roommates? Or I can't remember what the question. And I could answer yes, no. The trees were red, and then just stick it in the mailbox and then go home. I hadn't thought about that for a while.
Did and
So
so
I
you're kind of a
uh,
punk 18-year-old at that point. Did you think, "Oh, my mom's so funny," or did you feel guilty, or do you remember how you felt?
I thought it was kind of funny. Saved me a lot of time. All I had to do was check the boxes.
I don't think of your mom as having a hilarious sense of humor, but that is funny. All right. Well, so here's the thing that happened to you and then to your children, and now it happened to some degree to your grandchildren. And that is this: you did not come home from college, from New England to Colorado for Thanksgiving because it was too far and too expensive. And then you did that you told your oldest kid, my brother Mark, you're not coming home. And that first Thanksgiving, I know went bad for him because he didn't plan ahead. And then Beth and I were scared, so we started really working on Thanksgiving from day one. What are your thoughts on that now? Like, assuming a family has enough money to get your kids home, what would you say about that? Would you tell them, no, you should stay, it's good for you? Or what are your thoughts?
Hmm. Well, I have to think about that. Um, it didn't hurt anybody.
No?
I know Mark had a tough time at Thanksgiving when all the restaurants were closed, and he did not have an invitation to go to anybody's house Thanksgiving. And I know he had a can of smoked oysters. I'll never forget
Mm-hmm.
that. And that's what he had for Thanksgiving. But traveling back and forth was expensive. 2,000 miles. You either come on a train or you bum a ride in a car or you fly. And so, no, you're gonna stay put. That's
Well, I remember that Thanksgiving for Mark because it was a big topic of conversation because there was a phone call or something, and so we were aware. You and Mom were aware. Our oldest son is suffering. He's lonely. He's not going to die, but he's lonely and it's icky. I'm guessing that flipped Mom out.
yeah. We were feeling bad about that.
But he didn't come home next year.
That's right. Well, he learned. He learned. He had to do what you did. Make sure you had invitations to Thanksgiving dinner.
Well, I did it out of terror.
Well, you did
On
it.
day one, I'm like, "Hey, anybody? I'll just be here for Thanksgiving all alone."
Yeah.
Well, what about so did your parents come out and visit you while during your 4 years of college to see your roommates and whatever?
I think they came out once. I think they came out once. And it might have been during my freshman year. I really don't remember. Then they came out for graduation, of course.
I'm guessing, Dad, they had to be so proud of you because here's this kiddo doing something that was so unusual to go off to the East Coast to an Ivy League school. Did they tell you
Well,
they were proud of you?
no, but I remember my first two English themes that I was required to write came back with red marks all over them. And I thought, uh-oh. So I wrote home and I said, you better, if you're bragging on me because I'm at this fancy school, you better hold up because I don't know if I'm going to make it. And I learned how to avoid the red marks, after a while, but
Mm-hmm.
was it was it was quite a shock to me going from East High School in Denver, where I got very good grades, and I thought, well, I'm not going to have any trouble. And I go to this school back there and found out what competition was really like. And oh boy, that's well, you know that you went to Brown. You got an idea about how that was.
Yeah, but there was something different. So I am totally familiar of that feeling of going and being surrounded by people who went to boarding schools like Andover and Groton. And they actually read books that I didn't even know existed. So there was that. But when I was in college, there was more grade inflation. And I think when you were in college, you earned it. They were not, I think my grades were easier to come by than yours.
Well, there was uh, great inflation at later on, and we had none of that.
No.
We had, well, I think my first or second year there, they broke the C into two parts, C plus and C minus. So you had A, B, two C's, and a D and a fail. And I was a solid C student. I mean, I got some better grades. I got some better grades along the way, but I'd say I was a good solid C student, which I was told was good. That wasn't bad. And
Oh, so well, that's my question. So you were okay with that, even though you went from this A student in Denver to a C student. You didn't feel like I'm not good enough. I can't do it.
no, I didn't feel that.
You have confidence that I think is part of your success.
Well, I suppose.
I remember, so Mark went off to college at Dartmouth, and he complained on the phone, "Oh, it's so hard. It's really hard." And I remember exactly where we were in the back seat of your car with Mom, and you told Beth and I, oh, watch what'll happen. He's going to get these horrible grades. He's going to get D's or F's. It's going to be awesome. And then Mark, partly because he's very bright and partly because of grade inflation, did not get D's, and he got B's or whatever. And I think you are like, what the hell? What happened? You were proud of him and also like, what? What? Do you remember that?
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
All right, so,
I blame it on grade inflation.
well, yeah, I think Mark's smart, but yeah, totally.
When Mark was a teaching assistant at Harvard, he was grading papers one day, and he was giving people C's and D's. And the professor came along and says, nothing lower than a B. Think about that.
Yeah,
So,
I don't see how that's progress.
yeah.
All right, we got some people. Here's a good question. You went out to Dartmouth because you saw in a short film that they're skiing on campus. Kim wants to know, did you ski on campus?
Yes. They had a golf course with rolling hills. And then just down the road, there was what they call the Dartmouth ski hill. They had a rope tow for that. Maybe no, I think they maybe had a chair. It wasn't much of a hill, but it, wasn't the mountains. It was just a nice hill. But the golf course was rolling, and it was just terrific. And I did a lot of cross country skiing there. I thought that was great fun.
I'm assuming you did not have cross country skis. Did you? You had to buy some or what?
I don't know where I got them. I know they were wooden. They didn't have any edges on them, and we had to use very complicated waxing. There was something that was really gooey. I remember we put that on first, and then let that harden. And then you put a wax on over that. Some wax on the tip of your skis and the tails, and then some wax underneath the foot, so you could get a kick. There was no such things as scales or some of that
Right.
stuff.
I feel so. It had to be so much harder than what we do now, just because of the equipment.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so you got out of college. Your parents came to see you graduate.
Yep.
Did Alan come?
No, I think he might have been in the army at that time.
Mm.
Remember?
So you get out of college. Did you know then you wanted to be a lawyer, or how did law school happen?
No. I was at home, and then September came, or August, September came, and all my colleagues, contemporaries, were going to work, getting a job, or going to graduate school. I didn't know what else to do, so I went down to law school in Denver and signed up. And in those days, you could do it. So I went to Denver University Law School, and turned out I liked it. It was that's nice. Yeah, and I was good at it. It's something I could sink my teeth into.
Right.
Unlike I was an English major at Dartmouth, and they were saying, you have to get a few layers below the story and talk about symbolism and all that. That was hard for me. But with law, if the problem was A hits B over the head with a brick, what result? I could figure that out.
I've never heard you talk about that English stuff, saying that the symbolism and here's what it really meant. It meant that the guy was castrated. What? It's a book about fish. I struggle with that. That cracks me up that bothered you too.
Well, after a while, you get into it, but it was not easy for me. Not easy.
Well, I tend to think of myself, Dad, as a carbon copy of you in so many ways. And that makes me happy because I think you're awesome. But my senior year of college, I took a class called semiotics, which even though I took a whole class on it, I can barely tell you what it means, but it's deconstruction of language and deconstruction of story down to these basics. And I remember this guy with a black turtleneck stood in front of a class, and we're reading a story about, I'll make it up, like a guy driving a bulldozer, and he's talking about how this is really a phallic symbol and it's all about erections. And I'm like, you're full of shit. I just couldn't, it just didn't make sense at all. And hearing you say that literature at some point gets crazy, that just tickles me. All right, so you're in law school and you start to realize you're good at it and it's making sense to you. Tell me about that moment, or like, how did you start to realize, I think this is good. I think I can excel here. Was there a time or a moment that you realize you're good at it?
Well, when I got pretty good grades, that was an affirmation that maybe I was on the right track. Um, some of the courses in law school I hated. There was one quarter where I had two or three courses in taxation, corporations, property, or something like that. Yeah, if this is the law, I don't want any part of it. But I got through that quarter, and things were fine. It's very interesting. You know, it's nuts and bolts. That's real life stuff.
Right. Well, if you didn't like taxation, what classes did you like?
Torts.
Did
That
they
was
teach
fun.
you?
Torts, domestic relations, criminal law. I liked all that. Yeah.
That's interesting. Did they teach you any of the? I don't know the right word. I'm a performer. Did they teach you any of the performance side of being a lawyer when you're in a courtroom?
Oh. No, they teach you the law, and then you get out of law school, and you don't know what the heck to do with it.
Hmm.
So you got to
Well,
learn
walk
it.
us.
You learn the hard way. And in my senior year in law school, I went to legal aid, and then the students were able to get into court in certain civil cases by law. And the way you got involved in that was to go over to legal aid and take I don't know what you call it, a pro bono case. And people come in all stressed out over domestic relations problems or financial issues, rent, landlord problems, and you began to see, at least I did, how you could start to use the law, and that was very helpful. I like that. Not everybody did that, but I liked it.
I'm just trying to picture that you're not a lawyer yet. You're in law school still, and you're acting like a lawyer for these pro bono cases.
Yeah.
Who was more nervous, you as a brand new newbie, or the clients who said, "I got a law student. I couldn't even get a lawyer."
No, they didn't. They didn't know the difference. They came to law. They came to legal aid, and we helped them. And there were some senior lawyers in the legal aid system that would come and help us out. You know, we got stuck.
Ah,
But no, it was mostly landlord tenant law and
mhm.
debt issues, domestic relations issues.
Do you remember any of those senior lawyers? Did any of them, for example, did you strike up a relationship with them? They became mentors?
Um, yeah, one of them, can't remember Howard's last name, but he was very supportive. Became quite friendly for years after. So
And how did that work? So you're a young lawyer. Were you able to call more experienced lawyers and say, "I have no clue. Can I come over and ask you questions?" Or how does that work?
no, I never did that after I got out of law school. I mean, out of the law school and the legal aid. No, before I'd go to court, a domestic relations case, for example, first time I had a divorce, I was trying to help people out. I'd go to the courthouse and sit there and watch several divorce cases going on, so I could figure out what the heck you did and when you did it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's that's the way you do it. And then it's your turn, and you get up and you're nervous, but you've kind of got the roadmap. um,
Dad, to me, that is so impressive that you're just like, hold on, I don't know how to be a lawyer. I'll go spend a day in court. All right, I'm ready. That's insane, and well done, you.
well, you're not. You're making it sound too easy. It's you go to court and you see how somebody else does it, and then you got to stand up and do it. And domestic relations, that's one thing, but you got other kinds of cases where it's a little more difficult. And I really learned how to cross-examine physicians when I got some workers' compensation cases, and that was a big step forward, because doctors are gods, and you can't. It took some courage for me to ask the doctor, why did you make that dumb diagnosis, doctor? That never do it that way, but that you got the
Right.
idea. Learning the craft was hard.
You're still a young man when you were doing those workers' comp thing. How far into your legal career was that?
Well, let's see. What was I? I guess I was 23 when I got out of law school. I guess 23 or 24. I don't know. When got workers' compensation cases, maybe a year or two later. I don't remember. I can't remember much. I'm old.
Ah.
Can't keep the decades straight.
What I'm struck with so many things about the beginning of your professional career, Dad. One of them was that you decided I would prefer to be in business for myself as opposed to going to an established firm. And the second one is that means you did not have a senior partner looking over your shoulder as you would have had. You didn't have that built-in mentor. And
Yes,
to
I
me,
did.
that who was
Yes,
it?
yes, I did. My dad.
Well, tell me more.
Well, he was a lawyer. He was also a claims manager for a set of insurance companies, and he would send me, with the company's permission, send me some work where we both knew I couldn't get hurt too bad if I lost. The client get hurt. And that's the way I got started in the workers' compensation thing. This was with my dad. I mean, that if I hadn't had that, I would have gone into some other aspect of law. I don't know what. It wouldn't have been taxation, I can tell you for sure. No, and then I got more and more serious cases. Not that workers' compensation cases aren't serious, but more difficult, and then district court cases and federal cases, that sort of thing. And I think, once I was in the workers' compensation courts, other people and companies saw me and got to know what I could do, and that helped. So it feeds on itself. But my dad's the one that gave me a big start.
Well, tell us about that mentor relationship with your dad. How did that work? I could see that he fed you some cases that you thought were low stakes that both of you felt comfortable with and your client felt comfortable with. But does that mean you're calling him every night saying, I don't know what to do next? Or how did that mentor thing go?
Well, we were in the same office for a while. We had an office in the university building. He had an office and I had one next door in the same suite. And he he quit the claims business and left those companies and came down and lawyered with me. He had always had a large estate practice. The company that he worked for allowed him to practice on the side as long as it didn't conflict with anything they were doing. So we were in the same office, and I get stuck on something, and I just go over and say, "Hey, what do I do next?" Very nice.
I knew that he stopped working for the company and joined you as a lawyer, but I didn't know that before that you were in the same building next to each other.
Well, we weren't in the same building until he quit.
Oh, and so
I
when
had
was
a,
that?
I had, I had there was a lawyer on the 10th floor, I think, of the university building that had an extra office space in his suite. And it was very cramped. And so I was in there by myself for a year, maybe. And I finally hired a secretary because I didn't, wasn't bringing in enough money to pay anybody, but finally was able to do that. And she was in that same suite with me. And then when my dad quit, we got a larger space on the same floor. The two of us were.
I'm a little confused about the timeline. How long you graduate from law school? How long was the distance between that moment and when your dad quit and you guys were together?
Maybe 2 years. Just a
When
guess.
did you start the firm that you had Dave Little and the rest of your gang?
Oh, 1965.
So another couple years after that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
It we
how'd
were
that come about?
we were 4 years out of law school, I think. And his middle name was Cottrell, David Cottrell Little, and Cottrell's was a men's clothing store. And so for the first 4 years, he divided his time between being a deputy district attorney, trying criminal cases, and working at Cottrell's. And we decided that he'd quit the clothing business, get out of that, quit the DA's office, and we signed up together. So that was 1965.
That was a very good year because your third child was born then. One of the things that I'm not even sure how to ask you this, Dad, because forgive the fuzziness of the question. Something gave you enough confidence to say, I can do this. So you're a lawyer on your own, and your dad's feeding you some cases, and then your dad joins you, and now you're starting a firm with Dave Little. A few years later, I think a lot of people would say, I am too risk adverse for that. I need a sure thing. And that was never you, and I don't know how you got to that place, and I'm so fascinated where you got that confidence.
I clerked for a big firm in downtown Denver when I was in law school. And I quickly got the idea that I didn't want to be one of those young lawyers in a firm like that where I'm staying till 10 o'clock at night, bucking for ups, trying to figure out how to make partner and all that. And I don't like that at all. So that was it. I didn't want to do that. And I was not married when I got out of law school, didn't have any prospects. And why not? no risk. I didn't think I was living at home. that's that's not a bad deal.
Right. I didn't know you were living at home.
Yeah.
Well, wait, work out the timeline with me. So you start as a young lawyer. When did you get married on that timeline?
Well, let's see. Um, I got
It's
married.
suddenly a story problem.
I got married in December 59. 59. I got out of law school in December 58. Could that be
Right.
right?
So
I
you
think
were,
that's right.
so you weren't living at home that long. You got
Well,
married pretty
yeah,
soon.
yeah, I am. Yeah, I was.
Here,
I fit 3 years, wasn't it?
oh, I guess I did the math wrong. Here's a question from Debbie Kirk. Hey, Debbie. Where was your office when you and Dave first started together in 65?
Um, it was the university building. It was still the university building. And then by and by, Bay Young, who had an office next door with a man who became a judge, uh, and his partner became a judge, we said to Bay, "Well, why don't you come on over and we'll put our shops together?"
Mm.
And that kind of started things.
That kind of reminds me of your marriage. To me, it's luck that you would know mom such a short amount of time and then marry her and have a successful marriage. And it's just crazy to me that you're like, "Hey, Bay, join us," and then that works out. It feels like you did it over beer, and yet it was a really successful partnership. But I'm guessing you don't see it that way, as a fluke.
No, it wasn't a fluke. I knew Dave. Dave knew me. We both knew Bay Young. That's known quantities.
Right, but the world is littered with partnerships gone wrong.
Yeah, and the lawyers are notorious for breaking up and forming new ones. It didn't
Right,
happen
but
to
not
us.
you.
That's right.
Why do you think that is?
I think everybody's striving to work together um, towards common goals, mutual respect. Um, Thrashed out our issues, usually over a bottle of scotch at 5 o'clock.
Dad, in my job, the buzzword is culture. What's your corporate culture? How do we improve your culture? How do we create? You clearly had a successful culture in your firms because you stayed together. Who is the leader of that?
Oh,
Who
I don't
who
know.
set the tone?
I don't know. We just had an agreement. We were going to be nice to each other and respect each other, and we had great people working with us. You know, Debbie Kirk. Wow, she made me look good for 30 years.
Go Debbie Kirk. Well, when we were young, Debbie Kirk was just, we felt like we knew Debbie Kirk because you talked about her all the time.
What's the question?
I don't really have a question, just that she kind of felt like family to us. Your partners felt like family too, but even, I think you worked with Debbie more than your partners. So maybe we heard about Debbie more.
Yeah, probably.
Oh, here's a good question. Because I have some memories. Kim says, when did you first hire a female lawyer? Your career spanned that time, Dad, where so many changes in American culture were happening. First woman, do you remember that?
Um, yeah, I think we hired one when we were still in the university building, I think, and it didn't work out, and I don't remember why, but it just wasn't right. Oh, that was way long ago. But
I have
and
a
then
memory.
then we had Debbie Piazza. Debbie Piazza was first a secretary, then a paralegal, and she got out of law school, and we said, "You're hired." So I don't know what year that was, but she's still with the firm.
Mhm.
Is a terrific lawyer.
I remember as a kid, Dad, you were at One Park Central, and I don't know any names, but here was the drama. The drama was at some point after work in her office, a woman lawyer cried. And that was big news because all the, you and I think other men were like, can you cry and be a lawyer? Or it was just, it was big news. Do you remember that at all?
No, I don't. One of our lawyers, female lawyers, cried.
Mm-hmm.
That no, I don't
And
remember that.
my memory is that it was not with a client. It was just after hours. It was a stressful day or whatever. I don't know. Something was bad.
Oh, Debbie Kirk just put something up that says that she and Debbie Piazza started the same year in 1979. And I think Debbie Kirk was 19 or something. Is that right, Debbie?
I wonder also, Debbie Kirk, if you know what I'm talking about, if I'm making up that story about someone crying because I was a kid. My memory had to be a little shaky. What about lawyers of color, brown and black skin?
What about them?
Um, did you ever hire one? Did you ever work with one?
Oh, I'm sure I worked with more than one. Yeah, I can't remember the names right off. Um, we had a Hispanic lawyer for a while. He was an ex policeman. Nice guy. Phil Baca was his name.
Here's a picture of you. I love this picture.
Oh,
You're
look at
kind of a
those.
badass. So I'm guessing that had to be like 1972. That's about a guess. Debbie Kirk
Could,
says she doesn't remember a female crying. Uh, Debbie says she remembers Janet Jackham.
oh, Janet Jackham. Who was she? Was she a lawyer? Or, I remember the name. I remember.
Let me let me move forward in time a little bit. Because remember, my knowledge of your career is I was a little boy. But I remember lots of talks about personal injury. So at dinner time, it was not uncommon for you to say, yeah, we got a guy put his finger on a lawnmower and got it cut off. What an idiot. Now he's suing the lawnmower company. That was very common that we would talk about missing body parts or whatever at dinner. And I thought that was very fun. And growing up, we were kind of proud of that. Dad would talk about anything. But then it changed to breast implants. So tell us about that. When was that? And how did you, in the world, did you get to be the breast implant guy?
I'm not sure how it happened. For some reason, I got hired by a drug company. There was what was the name of the company? I guess it was Bristol Myers, uh, but they made different products. One of them was hair dye, Clairol. I remember that, and Clorox. Clorox was another product, and I remember getting a case um, from them on hair loss. Some woman went to a beauty shop and they put one of Bristol Myers products on her hair and it fell out. The hair fell out, and she was angry about that and
I could imagine.
sued. And by the time the trial was to come to a head, all that hair had grown back in, and it was long, curved down below her shoulders and beautiful. So I think we paid her $1,000 and got rid of the case. But
And
after I worked for the company, they knew me in Denver. Well, he could do hair cases. Maybe he could do breast cases. I don't know. Maybe
did
Debbie.
Bristol Myers make Clairol and artificial breasts? Is that how that came apart?
It must have. I don't know. It came from the same law office in New York. I don't remember.
So here's a picture of you about that same time with your 3 little cute kids. And Dad, look at that stash you're rocking. Look at that. Muy guapo.
Amazing, isn't it?
So the way my memory is it had to be at least a decade or something. You became the breast implant guy. You were, right? How long were you doing that?
Debbie can correct me, but I think it was something like 9 years we had that, and it really got kind of boring after a while. We never got to try any of them. They'd work them all up and worry ourselves to death and take a bunch of depositions, and then they'd settle. But yeah, it was good money, but for the firm, that was nice.
Right. All right, I'm going to take you out of here and let's talk about style. Here's one of the things I've always loved about you. Oh, Debbie Kirk says it was too long. Those 9 years were too long. You guys were not alone. You were not alone, Dad, thinking that it was boring.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, kind of fits my vibe of you, that you like doing a bunch of different things and learning a bunch of different things, and then somehow you got known for this one thing, and that led to a little boredom. It's ironic. Your success led to the boredom.
Is there a question?
You are still a lawyer. He still got it, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so here's the deal about style. I remember one time, and it was kind of peripheral, because remember, I'm a little kid. I think you got it in your head, with or without Mom's help, that you needed to have fancier clothes, because you ran in a circle of these elite lawyers in Denver, Colorado, and they are all fancy and driving fancy cars. And I remember you went and got a green sports blazer, and it had this wicked cool lining on the inside. And you just spent a ton of money on your wardrobe, I think for the first time ever, because you were not that kind of guy. And so my take on you is that you were just a person who let your own actions speak for themselves and was not really wrapped up into the packaging or the country clubs or the fancy suits, because clearly your peers must have been wearing handmade suits to talk about how fancy they were. And that was never your thing. Do I have this right?
Nobody I knew and worked with well handmade clothes and custom shoes. And neither did I. You think I was a clothes horse?
No.
Huh?
No. I'm saying you were not a clothes horse. You were wearing shirts off the rack, and I thought there was a period where you thought, oh, I have to step it up because people kind of expect me to have fancier clothes, so maybe I should try that once.
Nah.
I can't think of his name. I had a friend whose dad was that kind of lawyer, Dad. He was the lawyer that had the big fancy house and the big fancy cars, and his clothes looked expensive, whatever that meant. But even I could notice it as a kid, and you were not that way. And I always thought you were cooler.
Well, thank you. Thought you were pretty cool too.
You were similar. You taught me that with skiing. Because I remember I'd go ski and my peers might have had fancy clothes or skis or whatever, and you're like, just wait till they see you ski. That's what it's about. And it worked. And I'm like, that's how Dad ran his entire life. You were never flashy, like having the accoutrements of success. You just were successful. Pretty cool.
Yeah. We couldn't afford to buy a new ski stuff. I was
Did I'm, I think you just don't remember it this way, so I might have it wrong. Am I right that some of your peers were trying to act like big deal lawyers and trying to dress the part, whatever that meant to them, and you were aware of that, or is that just something that I have
Oh,
wrong?
there were some downtown law firms like Holland and Hart for a while, required men to wear hats. Um, I thought that was kind of funny. Um, some firms required always a suit. You had to wear a suit. Uh, and I know there were some times I made a decision when I was in court that if I wanted to, well, how to phrase it, uh, work with a friendly witness,
Mm-hmm.
I'd wear a coat. And when I was after the bad guys, I'd wear a suit. I don't know if it worked. But might influence somebody.
I kind of think that's just part of your charm, as you just said. They'll notice I'm good.
Well, yeah, I would call it charm. You think I got charm, huh? Well, that's
Yeah, I do.
nice.
Laura says Mark remembers you getting new clothes after joining the National Trial Lawyers Association.
Oh, that might have been the, huh? I
Ah,
might have gotten a new suit. It wasn't the National Trials Lawyers. It was the American College of Trial Lawyers. I remember that one. Yeah, those people were really fancy. I remember going to some of the national meetings of them. Boy, they were really gussied up.
well, I'm trying to decide if you're just saying shucks or you don't remember, because my assumption, Dad, is that you just lived your life and were quietly um, highly competent. You were a very good lawyer, and that all of those things external that other lawyers might have needed, it just never was your bag. And until one day you experimented with it, and I kind of think you probably rejected it. Bought some clothes and said, "All right, I tried that, whatever." But
No,
I,
you're reading too much into it. You know, I remember buying a suit before I went to the national convention of the American College. I do remember that.
well, look at this.
There were some law firms. I can't remember what the name of it was, but those guys were they were always dressed up really swanky. And I think they had fancier clients than I did. I don't know. Maybe they had to dress up for the client. We didn't dress down.
Right.
We wore a tie in the office.
Yeah, I get it. Uh, I think this might be Mark chiming in with Laura. You went to the Greenbrier. That might have been with the trial association.
That was the International Association of Insurance Counsel. Went to the Greenbrier. Yeah.
And Mom had to buy lots of fancy dresses.
I don't remember that, but that was a dressy uppy place. I hated that. That Greenbrier was so stuffy. You could
Mm-hmm.
not walk to the swimming pool without a sport coat on.
Mm.
I mean, it was really stuffy. they had green and blue rugs, carpets, and this was apparently something that you didn't do. Uh, but they were very proud of those green and blue rugs, and they even had a tour of the place where they talked about how wonderful it was and their decorator, and yeah, I thought it was awful. But the one nice part about the Greenbrier was that there was a lawyer friend of mine, and he said, "Come on with me. We're going downstairs." And it was just the two of us, and we went to a bar down there, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, I think we had to buy a membership to the bar. This was,
Oh,
I can't even, I'm not sure about that. But we sat down there and had a glass of scotch and talked about all the stuffed swells upstairs.
I think that's
Never went back. I never went back to that. That was
to the
awful.
to the association or to the Greenbrier.
No, Briar. No, the
I've been to
association
the
was,
Greenbrier.
huh?
I'm with you. I've been to the Greenbrier, and I'm with you. It has no appeal. That to me is one of your legacies, Dad, on your three kids. Is you? I'm not even sure you're aware of it. You have been this way your entire life. Like I just don't need all these visual things. I'm just going to be good to people and good at my job, and it's going to be great.
Yeah. Well, it's easier, isn't it?
No, I think it's hard, and I think you're a good role model because it's not easy.
Well, I don't agree with you. I think it's easy.
And right there is why you're awesome. Uh, I think it's Mark and Laura. They're asking about wearing cowboy boots. I remember you kind of dressing the part depending on where you are. It was like you would switch code. You went to the Eastern Plains, you wore boots. You want to talk about that?
I never wore cowboy boots.
No,
When I
but
was
you
a little
wore.
boy, when I was a little boy, I did. That was great. But
I
I was
think you had a
quite
case.
small.
I think you had a case in Lamar, and you had local counsel there, and you were the hot shot from Denver, and you flew in, and the local guy said, "Do you have boots?" And he said, "All right, you don't have boots. Well, wear your hiking boots." Does that sound
No,
familiar?
no, that's not quite right. But I the first time I went down there to do some work on the case, I hired a plane. Uh, and the client, I had to call the client to tell him, well, look, I can drive down there for 6 or 7 hours, uh, and it's going to cost you that much money, a lot of money, or you can give me that, let me do that plane and fly down there in a half an hour. So I did that, and the plane circled over Springfield and landed on a little strip. Um, and the lawyer that met me said, "Don't ever do that again." He said, "Everybody in town knows you're here and that you're some slick lawyer. And next time you come, you drive your car, preferably over dirt roads, and get it all dusty. And by the way, your tie is too loud and it's too wide. Make it a little less flashy, and get some dust on your shoes. And by the way, you speak too rapidly. Could you slow it down?" They all talked like Festus, like Mr. Dillon, howdy, Mr. Dillon, that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
So
Did you go
you
to court?
learn,
Did you go to trial? I mean,
yeah,
and how'd it
yeah.
go?
It went very well. One of the opposing lawyers was from Kansas, and he had facial hair. And my sidekick that lived in Springfield, that was working with me, said, "We've got the case made." He said, "We don't do facial hair in Baca County."
Springfield, Missouri. Where was that?
Huh?
Springfield, Missouri. Where was that?
No, Springfield, Colorado. It's way down in the southeastern corner of the state, almost a few miles from Oklahoma border
Oh, got it.
in Kansas.
You won on account of facial hair.
No, it was pure talent, pure talent. the spatial hair didn't that helped us. So
I've always thought of you, and I'm sure between Mark and Beth and I and Mom, we've said this a million times. Dad can talk to anybody. He can have a real conversation with anybody. And I got to think that skill translated to the courtroom, in Springfield and in Denver, where you were pretty good at connecting.
yeah, I suppose. Sure.
Debbie Kirk has something along this line. You once told me you talked to a jury as if they were your neighbor and you were leaning over on the fence having a conversation with them. That
Well,
sounds so right, Debbie.
well, thank you, Debbie. Yeah, okay, yeah. I tried to be folksy. I really did try to be folksy. It wasn't put on. It was just the
Right.
way I was.
Yeah, but I'm so interested in this comment from Debbie, because I'm a performer. I stand in front of people. You were outstanding at performing in a court of law, right? You were good at that. And I'm just really curious about those learned strategies and learned techniques that took your common sense and said, like, okay, now I'm getting better at this. Do you remember thinking about what, the performance part of that and leaning on the fence on purpose?
I listened to the preachers on Sunday morning when they're getting up there and they're talking about Jesus this and Jesus that. And the reason I did that was because I thought I could learn from them by the way they modulated their voice. Whether they go down and then they be quiet and then they get up and that. So I remember doing that, and I remember going to the bar convention one time, and they had two lawyers from New York. One of them was Harry Gare, and the other one was somebody Berman. And they did a mock direct and cross-examination of medical witnesses. And I was so bloody impressed. I thought, boy, oh boy, that's really what I'd like to do. And oh boy, I can still remember that the people just clapped. You destroy whoever the witness was. It was the doctors, I remember, and he was not in on the gag. He was trying to play it straight, and the lawyers just ate him up. That's terrific.
Well, funny you should mention that, because I wanted to ask you a question, but Mark is hitting me up saying, let's ask him about that. Tell us about that time you did exactly what you're describing. Medical case, and at the end, Judge Fullerton hands you a note and tells you he was proud of you or impressed with you. Can you walk us through that story? You tore up a witness.
I'll have to have Debbie's help on this. Maybe there was a
I think he had a fake degree or
expert,
something.
a whole expert, a hospital expert that came in from out of town, and he passed himself off as a real hot shot. And Debbie and Carmen and I think we worked like dogs getting some background on this guy. And I can't remember what he was, but he was definitely not an expert. He was a hired gun, and he had degrees that he bought from a diploma mill in California. And I remember speaking to the attorney general in California, and he said, this place is really bad. We closed them down, and he said, I think this so-called college has moved to Arizona or something. But that's something that we had in our pocket that we could really go after this guy. That was great fun. We ate him up, and I remember the lawyer on the other side got up, and after we'd worked him over, and he disavowed the expert. He pulled him out, wasn't going to use him. And Pete Pryor was co-counsel on that. I remember that case. I think he had the physician and I had the hospital. Yeah.
Do you remember the process of the strategy of exposing him in front of the jury?
I remember asking him about his school.
Debbie says you represented Rose Medical. He was the only expert against us. It's nice having Debbie here. Thanks, Debbie.
I remember asking him about his medical training or his hospital training and degrees. I can't remember if he passed himself off as a PhD or what, but I think he did. And it turned out he bought his master's degree and he bought his PhD. And so I asked him about the college he went to. I said, "Did you go back to Reunion?" And how big was the campus?
Mm-hmm.
Something like the American University or something. We looked it up and there wasn't such a place. And it turned out the Attorney General told us it was an office building or something like that. He had 1,100 square feet or something. That was his college. And he was doing some hospital work in some other state. And I think he was fired, and he stayed in his office against the wishes of his employer, and they had to haul him out. They came in and dragged him out, I think. Debbie, you remember that? Well, anyway, those kinds of opportunities for cross-examination don't come up very often, but we had the goods on this guy.
I kind of think Mom was in the gallery. Could that be true?
I don't remember.
Well, how did it happen that the judge, a guy that we knew because he was a friend of yours, hands you a note? And what was on that note?
I don't remember.
I think the gist of it was you just kicked some lawyer ass. Well done. I bet he didn't say it that way.
He didn't say it. No, I don't remember. But yeah, he tried very hard not to give me any slack. You know,
right.
He was worried. He was worried about that.
It must have felt good though to have a peer see you on one of those days that you said are rare, that you really get to tear someone up that way. It must have been great to have a peer see it and notice it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for doing this. I've been looking forward to this for such a long time, Dad. I'm going to ask you about hope because I always do, but first we just got to get into something I must know. I like drinking scotch and it's because of you, I'm sure of it. How did you get to be a scotch drinker? I like drinking scotch.
Oh.
Oh, yeah. Wait, let's go back. Debbie says, you asked me to sit at the table with you for the cross exam. It was a big moment for me and you did it perfectly. Oh, Debbie, dang it.
Ah.
That's so nice.
Yeah, thanks, Deb.
Debbie, do you remember what was on the note? And also, Debbie, I'd be curious if you remember if my mom was in the gallery, because that story is lore in our family, Dad. It's mythology.
Oh, well, I didn't know that.
Well, Debbie's thinking, tell me about scotch. How did you become a scotch drinker?
Well, Marty and I started off drinking Manhattans. And as we had more children, we drank more Manhattans. It was pretty. I don't remember how the Scotch got in, but somehow that supplanted the Manhattans.
And you had Scotch you and Dave Little drank scotch from the bottle in your drawer or something, right?
Yeah,
And it was always scotch. It wasn't.
yeah. It was always Scotch. Yeah,
What brand did you
and
and Dave Little drink?
we didn't do it very often, but sometime after work we'd just uh, get some ice out of the ice machine and shut the door. Nice.
I'm guessing everybody in your firm was like, ah, Dave and Robert are in there drinking again.
I don't know.
I don't know why that tickles me. Because you see it in movies where there's the crusty lawyer with a bottle in the bottom drawer. But, picturing you and Dave coming in and working over the day and talking about the upcoming case, I can picture that. Well, Dad, thank you for doing this podcast. It's I know it's kind of surprising for you, and it's a little surprising for me. I didn't do this a year ago. But I like to ask every guest what gives them hope. And of course, that's up to you. You can bring that up any way you want. Before we ask you about hope, Debbie's chiming in. I don't remember your mom being there. I do remember the note from Judge Fullerton, but not what it said. We went across the street afterwards to celebrate with a drink. Well done. It had to be a big day. Had to be.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was.
Thanks, Debbie. All right, Robert Montgomery, my dad, kick-ass lawyer, amazing mountaineer, skier, bird watcher, guy who can talk to anybody, a role model to me. What gives you hope?
Hope. What gives me hope? I guess that means expectations, does it? Um, I don't know. I think anything. I think people are mostly good instead of mostly bad. They're more good than bad, and that gives me hope for the country and for the world. Um, a lot of places that have strife, wars. They can't seem to work out things, but um, at least in this country, I think we're back on track after some troublesome years. Uh, I think things are going to be pretty good. I, I'm looking on the bright side, don't you? You do too. I
Well,
don't.
you've helped me this
I'm not
year.
very gloomy, huh?
You helped me this year during the pandemic, Dad, because so much was happening, racial strife and political strife and climate change and, oh yeah, a pandemic. And you were like, calm down, I'm older than you. It's a pendulum, it's swinging, it's just way over here, it'll come back. And that meant a lot to me.
Well, thank you. It does too, doesn't it? The pendulum.
I don't know. I hope so.
It will. Yeah.
All right, everybody, thank you for being here. My name is Brad Montgomery. My passion in my job, if you've been watching my channel, I'm interested in emotional and social support as it relates to progress and performance and bottom line growth. And that means part of this has been looking to the people who have been emotionally supportive and socially supportive to me. And there is nobody on that list above my dad. So thanks for being here, Dad. Hold with me, Dad. Everybody, thank you.
Thank
Stay
you.
put,
Thank
Dad.
you, Brad.